Man's best friend, ever at his side, to defend and protect your only source of pride. Food and love is all that you require, loyalty your heart's desire. Absent of you, what would we be? Hardened hearts throughout the land and sea. Thank God for you, our little friend. Thank God our hearts you forever mend. All right, welcome back to Patrick's book reviews. As you might have picked up from that little poem or from the title of the video perhaps, this month's theme is going to be dogs. So January is dog month, so I'm going to be reading some both dog fiction and non-fiction. And then in this video I'm also going to be talking about Dante and the Historathon 2026. I'm jumping in that. So I'll give you my my beginning books with that. And I also went on a mini book haul. So I'll share some of the books that I recently bought. So jumping right in with the dogs. I was actually going to record this outside to possibly get my dogs to join in the video, but it's fairly actually kind of cold and windy outside today for Thailand. And I was kind of lazy to haul out all these books. Plus, when I returned home this morning, my dogs had just killed a mouse. So they're currently devouring that. I didn't think that would make very good video. So the first book of this month, it's actually a reread for me. This is The Plague Dogs by Richard Adams. Now, I'm sure a lot of viewers will be familiar with Richard Adams from Watership Down is probably his most famous novel about the rabbits. And that's a great book, but I honestly think this is my favorite Richard Adams book, but I'd only read it once, and that was kind of back during the pandemic, and I had read a Kindle version of it, so I wanted to get my hands on a physical copy of it, so I got that, and now I'll be rereading this book. I've actually started because we're a few days into January. So I've gotten started. And yeah, so far it's as great as I remember. Now this book is the story of two dogs. And it kind of starts in, not kind of, it does start in a animal research center. And this is a fictional place that Richard Adams made up, because normally he points out in the introduction that animal research center would kind of just focus in on one kind of research, but he has a kind of a more general animal research center. So they're doing all kinds of experiments on different kinds of animals. And these two dogs are two of the dogs that are being experimented on. They're doing a water testing one on this one, like seeing how long a dog can survive swimming in water before it will just give up and die. So every time this dog will like fall under the water, they'll yank it out until eventually, I guess, over repeated times, he would eventually die. And then this little guy, he's pretty much the main character, and you can see they've been doing brain surgery on him. So initially, this book, one of the things this book is looking at is animal testing, and whether or not that's appropriate, the ethics of animal testing, basically. But it's a lot more than that. So the first chapter, that's kind of what you'll get. But these dogs escape, and they go on an epic journey. And so that's kind of the kind of story it is. And I was just reflecting, like Watership Down, when I was thinking about it. Watership Down is much like the Aeneid, where they're leaving their home in search for a new home because their home is being destroyed. And I would say the Plague Dogs is a little bit more like the Odyssey, because this dog, he's searching to return home. So he originally had a master, but for whatever, the book will get into it later. And I don't want to talk too much about this, but he got put in this research facility, and when he escapes, he's kind of trying to return to his master. And this other dog he calls it a mongrel dog. I don't know if that's still PC or not, but it's a mongrel dog that's never had a master. So they're kind of trying to return home, but they're experimenting with living in the wild. And so one of the other themes that this book is exploring is, kind of domestication versus wilderness living. And so that's one theme, but it's also kind of looking at whether or not, or what it means to have a master, I suppose. So there's kind of a lot of philosophical themes that you can take different ways with that, but I don't want to talk about that too much because I haven't finished rereading it anyway, but it's just, it's been really great so far. I really loved this book the first time I read it, and I think it might be one of my top 10 all-time favorite books. That's why I wanted to reread it, and it's pretty cool too. It's got nice illustrations throughout, and interestingly, the illustrations never have. Oh, this one I didn't even notice that. This one has 2 people in it, but this is the only one I've ever seen that has people in it, and the dogs are never in it. And so what they are is, this book takes place in northern England, like near Scotland. And this is actually where my brother lives now. He moved to Newcastle, and I didn't realize the first time I read this. When he moved there, I didn't realize it was basically in the same area. I was just telling him about that when we talked on the phone last night. But the thing that made me realize it was this has the Geordie dialect in it, which my brother's saying they speak in Newcastle, and it's like super hard to understand because the vocabulary is completely different. And some of the more common folk, working folk, or even some of the animals, like there's a fox in this, they speak in the Geordie dialect. And this is an American edition, so there's a introduction to the American readers in the beginning of this book. It's kind of funny, but basically, like Richard Adams, to my American readers, he kind of like toned down the amount of Geordie spoken in it for American readers, because it's really hard to understand. Like when I read it, I have to read it out loud. I have to do my pretend British accent, and then I'll do that out loud, reading the text, and then the words, because it's written phonetically, then it kind of makes more sense to me. But it does have a glossary of Geordie vocabulary as well, because some of the words are just they have no relation at all to the English language. I think the Geordie language actually, I think he said it derived from somewhere in Scandinavia. Anyway, so it has some different glossary of terms. So just to give you an example, let's see. Oh, here's an easy one, like hinny. That just means like a friend or a mate. They say hinny. So there's no way you'd know that just by hearing it. And then, there's some that are closer, like for night, it would just be N-double-E-T, so like neat, or reet is right. But a lot of them just have nothing to do with the English word. So I don't know, it's kind of fun. But yeah, don't let that deter you from reading it. It's not that hard. It's just some character, like the main 2 characters, they don't speak in the Geordie dialect, but like the fox does, and some of the workers do. That's kind of cool. But yeah, anyway, this is I'm having a lot of fun rereading this book. So that's book number 1. And then what I'm doing is I'm kind of pairing a work of nonfiction with a fiction dog book. So at the same time as I'm reading Plague Dogs right now, I don't have a physical copy of this book. I'm reading it on my Kindle, so I'll flash a picture up there. But the other book I'm reading right now is Lessons from the Wild. Oh, no. The Philosopher and the Wolf, and the subtitle is Lessons from the Wild on Love. I can't read my own writing again. I got to make sure. Love, Death, and Happiness. And that's by Mark Rowlands. He's a philosopher, and I hadn't heard of him. I just kind of stumbled across this book. I can't remember how. But he is a philosopher. I think he's originally from England as well, but I know he was at the University of Alabama. And he when he was quite young, actually, he started being a professor at age 24, because in England, I guess, you can do your undergrad in 3 years, and then your graduate school you can do much faster as well. So it's not as drawn out as it is in America. So he became a professor at a young age, and he was at the University of Alabama, and he saw like a classified ad in the newspaper about wolf pups. And so he went and he bought one. And I guess legally, you can't have 100% wolf as a pet, at least in Alabama. So the one he got was like 96% wolf. So it's basically a wolf, but it was a mix, a wolf mix as well. So it was like two different kinds. The father and mother were different kinds of wolves. I believe one might have been a gray wolf and the other, I can't remember what the other one was. But anyway, he got this wolf, and he quickly realizes, because I've started reading it, he quickly realized that he can't leave it home alone. Even as a pup, it just tore the house apart every time he'd leave. So he brought it with him its whole life. He brought it with him everywhere he went. So because he was a professor, he only had to work, like actually go into school, I assume, like a couple days a week. So he'd bring it with him when he lectured, and basically everything, like when he'd travel, he would bring it to hotels and stuff, kind of sneakily. And so he would do all that. And it's just kind of a story about what he learned, I guess, from having a wolf. He mixes some philosophy in there. Obviously, he's a philosopher, but he's not, as far as I know, I don't think he's like a animal philosopher. He might have had one book on, animal rights, kind of like a Peter Singer type thing, if I remember. But I think he mainly does like stuff on the memory. And this book is kind of, he was saying early on that like he keeping his memory of the wolf alive was important, because he had this wolf. He'd gotten it in the 90s, and I think it lived into the early 2000s. And then I don't know, I can't remember what year this book is from, but I feel like maybe 2014 or something like that. But anyway, it's not been that good so far, actually. I don't particularly like his writing style, and I've already found some things I disagree with him on. But I'm about maybe 25% done with it already, so I'll go ahead and finish it, but I'm not loving it. And then the next fiction work I'll move to after The Plague Dogs is City by Clifford D. Simak. I have no idea how to pronounce his name. I've literally heard him talked about on some booktube channel since I decided to read this. And every time I hear his name pronounced, I swear like everyone pronounces it a different way. This is him. And he's a sci-fi writer. And I kind of have some interest in him anyway, because he's from the Midwest, where I'm from. And he worked, he might have been an editor at the Star Tribune, which is the paper in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, where I lived and my parents now live. So I'm kind of interested in him for that anyway. I kind of like finding Midwest writers. But that wasn't the main reason I got into this. I heard about this book, and I don't know that much about it, but basically it sounds like there's some kind of it's like on Earth, they decided to do brain surgery on dogs. So it kind of does relate to the first book, Plague Dogs, a little bit, because they're doing surgery on dogs there. But they did it to try to make dogs like hyper intelligent, and it worked. And then I guess for whatever reason, humankind left the Earth and moved on to a different planet, and they might have left some like robots back on Earth. So I think there's dogs and robots, and basically, like, from what I understand, the dogs and robots were able to have a peaceful and harmonious society. But then I guess man comes back and probably messes it all up again. So that's really all I know about this book. It's fairly short as well. I think it comes in at just under 200 pages. And I forgot to mention too, with the Wolf and the Philosopher, that's also kind of similar to what Plague Dogs is dealing with basically like taking a wild animal and domesticating it, and kind of the ethics about that as well. But yeah, somebody's yelling outside. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading this book as well. And then the nonfiction work that I'll be reading alongside City is, let me just make sure I got the title right. But it's a work of nonfiction written by John Steinbeck, actually. And it's Travels with Charley. That's not the full title, though. I lost the page where I wrote it down. I think it's like something like Travels with Charley throughout America. Anyway, it's something like that, and I'll flash it. I'll flash the book up there so you can just read that. But this is a book about I think it's the last book that John Steinbeck ever wrote in 1960, and I think it's only his second work of nonfiction. And so he had a French poodle named Charley, and he took it on a tour across America. So I guess he left his wife at home and spent at least a few months on the road, and he had some kind of like a early version of a camper. I think he had a big pickup truck with a camper attached to it or something like that. And it's just kind of his reflections of taking a final trip across the US and maybe how it's changed in his lifetime and how it's changing going into the 1960s. I see he did go through Minnesota on that trip too, so I'm interested to see what he thought of 1960 Minnesota. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that book as well. I do like John Steinbeck, but I've never read any work of nonfiction by him. So that should be fun. That gets us through the dog books. But actually, this book has a dog in it too. There's the three-headed dog. Kerberos maybe is the name. I can't remember. But this is obviously Dante, the Divine Comedy. And so I always kind of have a kind of like an older classic that I read slowly. And so since I'd finished in my last video, you probably saw I finished the Aeneid. So I'm moving on from Virgil to Dante, which is perfect because Virgil is in this book as Dante's guide. And, you know, this is a work I'm sure most people are familiar with, so I won't go into too much detail with this. But what I will say is before reading this, I'd read Homer and Virgil, and that was very helpful. I would recommend doing that if you haven't yet and you want to read this, because there's all kinds of reference to the ancient Greeks in here, but also to Virgil plays a huge role in it. And basically Dante, so Dante is the main character in this, but he's also the narrator, and he's, you know, so there's Dante the narrator and Dante the character, basically. And so the narrator's kind of omniscient, but the character is not. So the character is the one kind of, he'll make the mistakes and whatnot. But Dante in this, you know, he uses a lot of Greek and Roman mythology. He'll also use history, so Italian history, and he also goes into Italian politics. So there's kind of a lot of information in here that is hard to be familiar with. Most people are not going to be familiar with, especially the late 13th century Italian politics in Florentine. You know, nobody's going to know about that besides a scholar specifically focused on that area. So it is good to have some kind of a helper when you're reading the Divine Comedy. And there's a few different ways to go about that. So this is actually my second time reading it. The first time I didn't finish it. I got bogged down with some other stuff, but I think I did get through the first book of this, but I didn't finish the second two. And what I did the first time was I had a modern translation, and I don't remember who the translator was, but it had like extensive footnotes. And for me, that made it a less enjoyable experience because, like I said, you do need that information. And so it's helpful when he's talking about like an obscure Italian politician, because you need to know, like, it's important to know what that person's sin exactly was, what they did, because Dante's referring to them in that nature. But I don't like when, especially when like epic poetry or some kind of poetry when it's bogged down with footnotes. The same thing happened to me years ago when I tried to read the Japanese poet Basho. Like that one just had like more footnotes than actual text. And so for me, it just kept taking me away from the poem. And so it's just kind of hard to keep the, the general gist of the poem alive in my mind. But this time, I'm doing something that I also did last time, but there's a lot of YouTube content on Dante as well. And I think it was Baylor University. They made a series back in the pandemic. It's called 100 Days of Dante. And so every day they would release one canto. And so Dante has 100 cantos, so one canto for each day. And that's how I'm reading it. I'm reading a canto a day. A canto a day keeps the devil away. But that's been really helpful for me because then I don't need the footnotes. And basically the video, a fairly short video, they're all, somewhere around 10 minutes. Some are a bit shorter, some are a bit longer. But they just went to different universities. It's not all Baylor University professors. So each video basically that I've seen so far has been a different professor, and they'll talk about that canto. So you'll get the background information and pertinent details and things that I missed anyway. So even without the, who exactly a certain politician was or something like that, they're good at kind of bringing out other themes or little things that flew by me. So that's been really helpful, and I enjoy doing that more than reading footnotes. And of course, with any classic work, the translation can be pretty important to kind of find something that basically keeps you reading it or keeps you engaged. And this version is I think it's like a Barnes and Noble edition. But the translation on this one is it's by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. So a famous American poet, and like the Paul Revere, and it also has illustrations from Gustave Doré, and the illustrations are incredible, and they're all throughout here. But Longfellow, he was the first American to translate the Divine Comedy. Not the first English translation, but the first American to translate it into English. And since he was a great poet, the poetry of this is really good. And he wrote it a little bit in a style that's a little bit even earlier than his time. So it's got kind of the these and thous and that sort of language. And so for me, that flows really good with the poem. So I like that. And then it's, here, I'm just turning to a random page. There's a lot of illustrations like that. Just turn randomly to another page. So you get like, different scenes from the Divine Comedy. And so just basically, I love this translation. It's making me appreciate the Divine Comedy so much more than I did when I read the earlier, later modern translation of it. So yeah, I'm loving it so far. I'm only into, I think today I'll read Canto 10. So not too far into it yet, but it's been really great. I definitely found the right translation for me. And so, find what's right for you. But I love Longfellow, and if you're a fan of his poetry, or if you're just a fan of poetry in general, especially if you're an American, I think Longfellow is the way to go, in my opinion. But find what's right for you. And okay, so I'm going to be joining Historathon 2026. Not in any official capacity. They're doing a Discord thing as well. I don't actually know what Discord is. It sounds scary though, so I'm not going to join Discord. I've never been on any social media other than YouTube, if that's social media. So I want to keep it like that. I don't know if Discord's actually social media, but anyway, right before Historathon, the announcement, I heard about it. I just started reading. I'd ordered a 3-book set called Byzantium. And so right now, I started reading in like mid-December probably, the early centuries. So this is the first of the 3-volume set. And in Historathon, and by the way, this is by John Julius Norwich. And I think this was written in 1988. Now, this in Historathon, it's divided into 4 periods, and there's a ton of great videos on that. I think if you just search for Historathon 2026 or hashtag, I think their hashtag is hashtag Historathon 2026, you'll find a bunch of great videos, and I think all of the hosts have made their own kind of explanation videos that are very short, so you can get caught up on that. But basically what it is like you divide the year into 4 quarters, and each quarter, like the first quarter is from any time prehistory until the year 500 AD, and then it goes the second 3 months. The second quarter is from 500 AD to 1500 AD, and then the third quarter is 1500 to 1820, and then the fourth quarter is 1820 to now. And then you're free to choose whatever you want within those time periods. Now I'm going to be cheating a bit. Like I said, I finished this, and it starts with Constantine the Great. So it starts, somewhere around the year, a little after the year 300. So this actually fits within it. But about halfway through where I am right now, I'm already starting to get into the 500s. So obviously the Byzantine Empire stretches past that time period, and I think it'll go into the, maybe I think this might end around the 1200s or something like that, or with the Crusades maybe. But I started reading this and I'm loving it, and I don't want to just read half of this and stop and then go to ancient history and then come back in 3 months. So I'm going to go ahead and cheat, and I'm going to read the entire Byzantium trilogy or 3-volume work. And it's cheating, I know, but I didn't know, because I was already started in it, and I'm a completist. I don't want to divide it up, and technically it does start, before the year 500, so a little bit there. But I'm going to try to finish it in a timely enough fashion. So I plan on getting through the first volume this month, and then getting into volume 2, which is the apogee. And this edition, so again, I'm out of my years here, but this goes from the year 800 to 1081. So none of this would be in the right time frame. But of course, Byzantium stretches into the original time frame. And so I definitely want to get through with those 2, hopefully this month, so that I'll be able to start getting in on the third volume just right here next month. This one's a little bigger too, so I'd like to get onto that so I can actually squeeze in a little ancient history in the final month of the quarter. I do plan on actually going back and reading some Greek history, but I'll make a video. I'm ordering a bunch of books for it right now, and I'm waiting for those to come. So when those get here, that'll be probably my next video, but it might be a few weeks maybe. So I don't know. Maybe I'll make a video before that. But that's what I'm doing for Historathon. And and this is amazing so far too. Like I can't take myself away from it. John Julius Norwich, I highly recommend him. He's like a very engaging historical writer, and so I'll talk about this obviously when I review it. But I'm loving this so far. Okay, this video is taking long again. I thought this would be quick. Okay, and then I went on for the New Year's. My family traveled to like the big city kind of near here to meet with some relatives. And then also yesterday was my daughter and I's birthday. So we went to have dinner in the big city. So there is a little bookstore there. There's a bookstore in the mall, and they have a special section now where they have English books. They never had that before, but there's a bookstore in Thailand called Asia Books. Might be throughout Asia. But they used to have kind of standalone stores, but now they're a lot of them are, I think because they're just not doing that great probably. So they're appearing in like a bigger Thai bookstore called BTS, and then they'll have their own little kiosk or whatever in the middle of the store. But anyway, there's one of those nearby me now. So I do appreciate that. And I try to buy some books when I'm there, just because I don't get a chance to go to a bookstore, a physical bookstore, very often. And one of the things that they have are Collins classics. And so I know most people prefer like Penguin or Oxford, but Collins classics, they're kind of they're a working man's classic, I would say. They're first off, they're very cheap. No matter what the size, small or big book, they're they're almost always, the American price on it is $4.99. But even in Thailand, somehow they're somewhat cheaper. Plus I have an Asia Books like membership card that I got for free years ago when they're having a promotion. So I always get at least 10% off. So anyway, I bought some Collins classics when I was there. So I got, the first book I got was James Joyce, Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. This is one that's on my 50 books before 50 list. So I was happy to find this there. And Collins classics, they're simple, they're basic. Maybe they won't hold up forever, but the print is a decent size and it's got enough margin between that you're not getting like squeezed when you're reading it. And I never annotate books anyway. I hate writing in books. I never will do that. So I don't need a lot of extra margin space that maybe the Penguins would give you. And so I found that. And then I also found Sir Walter Scott, Ivanhoe. I've never read this. And when I do Historathon 2026, I'm going to work in, you only read nonfiction history for that. But on the side, for my fiction stuff, I'd like to work in some things in those periods. So for the 500 to 1500 period, this is considered the, I guess, first historical fiction novel, but it's dealing with the time of the Crusades. And so that fits in great with the Byzantium that I'll be reading as well. And I'll also be reading about the Crusades, but more about that later in another video. So this one I'm excited to mix in. And then I got another one I can mix in, Chaucer, Geoffrey Chaucer, with the Canterbury Tales. And, this one's kind of a pilgrimage where different, tales are being told on the pilgrimage. And it's in the form of poetry, and I'm really excited to read this as well. And the time period, it's written in Middle English, and he lived from 1343 to 1400, so it fits in with that time period. And I'll give Collins Classics a lot of credit for this too, because they have used a lot of the Middle English, which I think is awesome. But then also on each line, they'll have a little star by the Middle English word, and then at the end of the line, they'll tell you what it is. So for example, asked upon a casa cloister, and then so a cas, they say that's an occasion, and a cloister is a monk. So you get that modern English translation right next to it, so you don't have to be flying around. And so I'm kind of always interested in older forms of the English language. So I've never read anything in Middle English, so I'm looking forward to that as well. Talking too much. And then I got the Three Musketeers yesterday as well. I think next month I'm going to read The Count of Monte Cristo. And so I just figured I'd get the other famous Dumas novel, or one of them. And this is the same price. It's a huge book for so cheap. Some of these, the introductions on these are very, very basic. They'll kind of give you the life and times of the author and a little information about the book. But you're not going to get like a big, long, academic introduction in most of these, other than in the Iliad. There were like great introductions on that. But I think that was because they came with the original edition the original translation that I had, the Alexander Pope. So it had, essays by Alexander Pope and whatnot. But anyway, Three Musketeers. And the last book I got was another book off my 50 before 50 list that I need to read. And that's Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I'd never seen this version of it. It's a UK edition from HarperCollins, or it says Harper Voyager. But I kind of like it because I've always seen the kind of like the American one where it's the black with like the red matchbook on it or whatever. And I never really liked that cover too much. I like this one a lot better. It does have a quote on the top from Barack Obama, which I thought was kind of funny because it's a UK edition, and why would you ever put a politician's like blurb on the front of a novel. I know Obama's pretty popular, but it just feels like it's going to be polarizing to put a politician's quote on a novel, but maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, I like the way it looks. So that was my little book haul. And I was going to show you a calendar I got today, but I'm not going to bother with that anymore because this video is getting too long. So, let me know if you've read any of the books I talked about today, and dog books. If you have any dog books that you love or that you're currently reading, let me know as well. And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next time.